Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about growing your own food. I'm delighted to welcome special guest, Nicky Schauder. Nicky is a certified permaculture designer who applies her expertise to helping gardeners grow an abundant harvest at home. She and her husband Dave have been invited to speak at health expos, university symposiums, podcasts, and local gardening clubs. You can learn more about Nicky and the webinar she offers at her website, growmyownfood.com, and I'll include a link in the description. Welcome, Nicky. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks, Linda.
Oh, I'm excited to be talking about this topic. And right now it's harvest season and some beautiful things are growing in my garden. And I am not an expert. I do not have a green thumb. So I'm really excited to learn from you. But I'm also kind of curious about what is your story? What got you to be passionate about teaching people how to grow their own food?
I guess my garden journey really started in the Philippines, which is a third world country in the Asia Pacific, where a lot of people live in poverty. But at the same time, a lot of people are more joyful than I've observed here in America. At least that's what I've experienced. And back home, growing up in a country with a lot of poverty, yet a lot of rich natural resources, and seeing at that time in the 90s, the threat of urban development encroach upon the land, I really had an environmentalist heart from the get-go. And I didn't know exactly what shape or form that would take throughout the years. I thought of becoming a marine biologist, but I'm a poor swimmer. And but my husband, he loves to scuba dive. But looking back, I think my earliest writings were fictional stories of development, like seeing urban development from the eyes of the national bird of the Philippines, the haribon, or otherwise known as the monkey-eating eagle. So flash forward to the US, I met my husband, Dave, here, and we started having kids. We now have 6 children.
Wow.
Yes, and our first 2 children had really bad allergies, and we didn't know where these were coming from. We didn't have really extreme allergies that they had, which my daughter was allergic to nuts, all nuts, peanuts, milk, wheat, peas, chicken, eggs, dairy.
Wow.
And that was amazing. So she could hardly eat anything. She was 18 pounds for the longest time, and she was diagnosed failure to thrive.
Oh, no.
And they did a lot of tests on her, and we were so worried. That was our first child. And then when our second child had allergies too, we were like, there must be something wrong with something. There must be something wrong with what we're eating, the conventional food system. And then we thought, okay, we're going to start growing our own food on our own. And my husband had some experience. Even though I grew up with a gardening grandma, she would love to encourage me, but I would not be so interested when I was younger. And then now all of a sudden I was trying to learn, and it wasn't until we stumbled upon the word permaculture in one of our bookstore dates that we started growing successfully. And so that's the beginning of our permaculture garden journey.
So how's your child doing now? Was it a girl? Was she able to eat better and more? And
yeah, Zoe is now 14 years old. At that time, there were hardly any resources for allergies, allergy-free cookbooks. So it was really hard to create these new flours on our own, taking flours from millet and other grains that we weren't even familiar with. But now she's outgrown a lot of her allergies. So the only ones remaining are the nuts, and then now she can eat almonds, and so can my second. He was allergic to fish, and now he can eat fish, but he can't eat nuts. He still has the nut allergies. And the rest of them, so that's when we started growing organic, eating organic. And of course, this is purely anecdotal, disclaimer, I have no scientific study. I just have my 6 kids as my guinea pigs. But the 4 others that came after them, they're allergy free, thank God. So,
wow. Okay, so that's amazing. It is hard to keep children alive and to feed them even when they don't have food allergies. So to be able to have all of that compounded on top, you deserve a medal for having your kids survive. That's amazing. Well done.
Oh my gosh, Linda, you're so gracious. But I think there might be other parents out there that are experiencing some health issues, and that's where we were. That's where we turned to the garden. And thank you for your words, but I feel like it was totally desperation, and you're so empathetic.
Yeah,
I love
we've
it.
done some food allergies, and it makes things challenging. So I understand. And I think it's so beautiful that you found a solution and now you're reaching out so that you can help the other people who are dealing with it. Because I know with some of the things that we dealt with, I felt like I was the first person, and when you find, oh, there is someone else, and here's some suggestions and here's how to get started, it helped. It's just helpful. So we're going to talk about gardening, and I'm so excited to be learning about permaculture, but I would also like, if it's okay, to talk a little bit about why. I mean, how does this benefit? I mean, it benefited your children by helping them to be healthy and to be able to thrive, which is huge. But I think for most people, they just think, well, I can go to the grocery store and buy food, so why would I want to buy? I mean, why would I want to grow food? How does that benefit people, not only physically, but maybe mentally and emotionally and financially and spiritually even?
Yes. We definitely started out first dabbling into gardening because of our health issues, but that quickly led us to find more joy. As the more and more we grew, the more and more we understood how connected that connection between the land and your gut. I often say the soil is like your gut, because there's an ecosystem below ground that supports the ecosystem above ground, and there's an ecosystem in your gut that supports like almost your whole like health, your health, the health of your body. And permaculture, which is a design science based on observation of nature, we found that it was an extremely holistic approach to looking at your plants, your animals, yourself, your diet, your home in design. So it's more than just permaculture itself. That term is like an umbrella term for organic gardening, for regenerative agriculture, for composting. But we use its principles. It's more than just gardening, but we use its principles first in the home garden, and then it slowly seeps into our daily living. As we bring home the harvest, we have to learn how to can it. Everything is connected to everything else. And in permaculture systems, we start to recognize that nature has patterns, and that we try to mimic those patterns. And those natural patterns are God-given. And then that's where the spirituality comes in, is that you cannot help even if when I met my husband, he did not have any professed organized religion, and it was in his hikes and in nature that he found a serenity and a peace, where he was talking to somebody, that he believed, and that I think that was his first steps towards God. And its principles, are used in. So, for instance, with each turn of the season, you see there's a succession that makes the system more efficient, more stable, more diverse, and more abundant. And the permaculture designer, the role of us as designers of our gardens is to shepherd and guide this system. And in the process, we reduce our work. It's less work. You don't have to go to the grocery if you want blackberries, because I can just, at least for this whole month, I can just kind of step out and get a pint of blackberries whenever I want. And we get the most local, most nutrient dense, if you're talking about health, food that money cannot buy. And if, God forbid, the trucks stop coming and something happens, you have in your backyard a form of a grocery right there. And then if you've grown it intentionally, which doesn't take a long time, we've seen gardens transform in 3 to 6 months, and we thought it would take years to regenerate. And it doesn't take a lot of time to create a garden, because nature is so willing to work with us, and God is so willing. God is present in those natural systems. So I can go on more about finding God in the garden, if that's something that you'd like me to expound on.
Oh, all of this is sounding amazing. And when you're talking about working in harmony with the earth and paying attention to the patterns that are already there, rather than trying to recreate the wheel, so to speak, you're paying attention. So will you give me just a basic, permaculture 101? How do I transform my garden so that I'm working more in harmony? I love the idea of making it easier. I'm a fan of easy, and I would love success. So teach me.
Yeah, so another word for permaculture gardening is lazy garden.
Oh,
So,
yes, sign me up
yeah,
for that.
yes, it is, because once you set it up, okay, maybe the investment is 2 days of installation in your backyard, initially hauling the dirt or creating the garden beds. And then the way that if you start with a raised bed, normally we ask our clients to start with the act of growing seeds and harvesting their own microgreens in 1 week. And that in and of itself is such a great skill to have that confidence that I can grow anything from seed, and then the meditation on the seed and what that brings is just so deep. So we starting with sprouts, and then once they're ready with that, they've gotten that skill down, that's too easy for them, and they're ready to start their raised beds, then usually the most common raised bed that people start, the veggie bed, is done with something called lasagna gardening. And so these are just methods that we have accumulated, but it's also always done with observation. So where to put this garden, got to first look at your land, and then we have a way to observe the land. Our friend Amy Strauss from 10th Acre Farm is another permaculture author. She got us first growing. She was not my teacher per se, but her book started us. We appear in her book because we were reading her blog and we started implementing things. And one of the things that she says is it only takes 15 minutes to garden, but 7 out of those 15 minutes should be spent observing. And I think that's so powerful. So once you get the observing down, you don't have to take a long time. You can do it in 10 days. You're taking notes of different aspects of the land. Where does the sun shine or not shine? Where is there a microclimate? What critters are where? What weeds do you see? So there are 10 things that I sing about on a webinar. So if you hop out on one of our webinars, you're bound to hear me sing of these 10 crucial steps that most organic gardeners forget about. But that leads to design. And then once you design it with these things in mind, the access, the aspect, the sun, where the sun is, then you start planting your lasagna garden. And the lasagna garden is a raised bed that has underneath, instead of plastic weed barrier, we just use Amazon cardboard boxes, that we flatten, overlap, and that protects the weeds. But over time, it disintegrates into the soil and builds the soil up. But for the time being that things are growing, it doesn't let the weeds in. And true enough, I only install gardens every time I install a school garden nowadays. And we did one with school kids last March in our local Title I schools. And I get surprised how easy it is not to have weeds, because we didn't go back until July after school closed. And then the principal was like, I'm so sorry, we didn't weed. I'm like, there's no weeds. The only things that came up were the things that we planted, and the things that didn't come up they just died. But the things that died, but there are no weeds. It was just a lasagna garden and I can send you the link to that blog as well, and how to build it, and a video on how to build it as well.
That's amazing.
It's a great thing to start.
I love no weeds, so that makes gardening easier. Just you don't have to pick weeds because there aren't any weeds to pick.
Yeah,
nice.
But it all starts with that design, just starting that design, and that laying down that weed barrier and the layers of soil and compost that go after it into your lasagna garden bed. And yeah.
So I'm assuming lasagna garden bed means that you're not worrying about tilling everything in. You just put a layer of this, and then a layer of that, and then a layer of this. And then when you get to the top, then you just plant your seeds and you're good to go?
Yes, you plant your seeds, and then the last layer we put is straw, just to make sure there's no evaporation during the summer, and that keeps the soil a little warmer during the winter. But yes, and the layers don't really matter as long as there's compost somewhere in there, and there's like some sort of a soil, a crumbly, good, soil that's in there as well. What does matter is if you could introduce, that's why the compost is important, the microbiology or the that ecology that would promote abundant growth. So it, like I said earlier, that ecosystem below ground that supports the ecosystem above ground is crucial. So if you have the composting bacteria, that the compost is usually made of good bacteria, earthworms, but beneficial fungi, which 80% of fungi is beneficial, but because of the pesticide industry, we've probably been trained to think that most fungi that we see is bad, but 80% of it are in some mutual beneficial relationship with your plants. So cultivating that life in the soil comes from just setting, putting that compost in there, and maybe putting your food scraps in one of those layers as well, underneath, so the rodents don't get to it, or nothing can sniff it out. But once it's set, it kind of dissolves into the soil, becomes the soil. The earthworms do the work for you and round things out. In the first year, your bed is kind of wonky. You're not quite sure what's going to grow or whether you've done it right, because everything's trying to balance itself out. But the next year, it gets better and better. And it gets better as you sort of amend the soil and depending on what you grow as well. So as the seasons go, we grow with the seasons, as nature dictates. As the fall crops are nitrogen, we try to put nitrogen-rich crops, which are legumes, in each of the seasons, and that always feeds nitrogen back in the soil. The thing that promotes abundance into your soil really is the plants that you put in. So as they die, we don't pull them out and yank up and disturb the root layer. We try to just chop and drop them. Now, if you're starting with soil that's super compact, then the first year we just, we'll try to decompact that without the use of a rototiller in a very manual way. Like sometimes we use pickaxes, and sometimes we'll use broad forks to just wiggle the soil out and aerate it. But as soon as we do that, we inoculate or introduce those life forms that are beneficial for the soil.
Like do you buy worms, or do you find them someplace else in the garden?
If the place doesn't have worms at all or compost, then we would buy worms and put them in there. Or mycorrhizal fungi is another thing that we put in there. There's some nitrogen-fixing bacteria that help the roots. They're associated with the legume plants, and they have a symbiotic relationship with legume plants, and these are Frankia and Rhizobium bacteria. And so you can purchase these. These are like Endure, I think is one product, N/Dure. If your soil doesn't have that, but if you have beans growing in there, that would help too. That's why that's the science behind the cover cropping that happens in the fall to the winter, when you kind of leave your land fallow in a way, but you cover crop it with these green legumes to promote more nitrogen in the soil, and also carbon, because some of them aren't legumes and they just grow and then they winter kill. So they're killed by the frost, and then they become part of the carbon in the soil, and the roots build that soil up. So
wow, that's amazing. Okay, so there is a whole lot that I don't understand that I am going to have to learn. So can you just learn line upon line? I mean, or do you have to do the whole thing right from the beginning, or you're toast?
No, I think the first step really is to hop on one of our webinars, honestly, and then start from where you are. Like if you're already starting a garden in your backyard and you've already been growing and you're confident with that, then I would say hop on one of our webinars first and see if that might not help you design your garden. We also have monthly, the topics change from every 2 weeks, and every month we have a planning webinar depending on and it's seasonal. So whatever the season calls for, that's what we'll be talking about in the monthly garden planning webinar. And on there, we talk about, okay, what should you be doing in your garden this month to maintain, to harvest, to sow, or to fertilize. But I think you learn as you go. You learn as you go, as you grow more. Right. You observe more, and then you learn more, then you apply. And at the end of a year, you can. I think the key thing is really to observe and to take notes and to learn from that reflection as to what the land is telling you to do. And sometimes one of the advices that I give the clients is to not forget to put a chair in a comfortable place in your garden, to encourage you to just foster that meditative spirit and meditation, to look at your garden, to appreciate the abundance, and to see what it needs for you to do for the next season.
Wow. Okay.
And if you need help, then that's what our DIY program's for, is we get to consult with you once a month. And if you're stuck, we get you forward. We find solutions to whatever it is that, rodents or bugs or pests or disease that you might not have encountered before.
That is amazing. Okay. Wow. Beautiful. So when you know what you're doing, then other things become easier. And I love the idea of putting a chair in the garden and watching. I think sometimes, I don't know, growing up, you think that outside and work, because weeding, because we had to weed, it's a drudgery. And the idea of sitting and enjoying and contemplating is beautiful. Now, some of the things that you're suggesting, a lot of people don't have a yard, or maybe they have an HOA, or they have, kind of a situation. So I know you do some things to help, like deal with an HOA situation or to grow things inside. Can you give us some pointers on what do you do if you don't have a yard or don't have a space for a garden outside?
Great question. So for us, we do have an HOA, our homeowners association, and every year we get a letter saying that we need to do something because we do like to grow our food in the front, and there are restrictions as to how to do that or not to do certain things. So we limit it to a lot of the vegetables that look more like ornamentals, because in the end, a lot of the ornamentals really are edible. And we do have a few ornamental onlys in the front. I think things that help are alyssum. They sort of spill over and create a beautiful border. Swiss chard are beautiful additions to a front yard. And also the placing of it in a repetitive pattern, very planned way. And I think one of the HOA restrictions for us is do not let it spill over your wherever it is that your garden ends, or whatever your property line is. You have to totally cut that. So I think those things we can live with, when they tell us to, if at one point they did tell us to we cannot grow tomatoes and we cannot grow peppers. So that one was very heartbreaking in the front yard. And that was the sunniest part of our garden. So we grow 25% of our food despite these restrictions, 25% of our produce, despite these restrictions, in the back, which is a shady yard. So some people may think I have a shady yard, but I can't grow anything there. There's lots of shady perennials that you can choose from. Rhubarb. There's a Native American tree called the pawpaw, which is now in fruit, and we've just harvested too many of them that we're not sure how to eat them all up, but they're delicious. And there are vertical trellises to help things climb up in the back in a shady yard. Now, indoors, we also grow by our south-facing windows. We grow on top of our fish tank, believe it or not. We have a little Mother Earth News segment where we teach people how to grow inside their house and outside, even in the winter. And we have a fish tank. So that's a very cyclical system, unlike an aquaponic system that's very linear, in the sense that you would be adding nutrients that you bought from a store, in a bottle. With a hydroponic system that is fish tank, where you're relying on the fish's poop to feed your plant roots, and then we grow lettuces that way. In the basement, we grow mushrooms, and those are really medicinal and really great addition to anyone's diet.
Are they hard to grow? Are mushrooms hard to grow? Or are they easy?
They are easy if you get the kit. They're easy because you just spray. In the kit, you just spray with water you mist it pretty much every other day. And we grow oyster mushrooms that way, blue oysters. We've grown lion's mane, something called lion's mane that's medicinally. All mushrooms have proven to be having anti-cancer properties.
Oh, interesting.
Some more than others. Like turkey tail is a well-studied one for cancer, for even for augmented treatments together with chemotherapy. But we don't grow turkey tail. We grow there's some that are easier to grow than others too, so we grow the easy ones. Oyster mushrooms and lion's mane are easy, and we've grown reishi, which is another medicinal immunity boosting mushroom, and those are in bags. You can buy them as kits, and they are grown in mushroom bags that you keep by your sink, and then you just, because you see it every day, you just mist it every day.
A bag. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can
Man.
we grow them, if you have a shady yard, we grow them in logs. We grow them in sawdust. That's just on like a garden bed, but for mushrooms. So yeah, there's different ways to grow mushrooms as well. But the easiest intro to mushrooms way is, and my husband has a course on this too, and on our website, is to grow them using a toilet paper roll in a bag.
A toilet paper roll in a
Super
bag.
Yeah, super accessible, super accessible.
Okay, I'm pretty sure we have some of those on hand. Wow. Okay, well, I'm definitely going to have to check out your website. That is amazing. Now, as I'm listening to you, it's like I want a tour of your yard and your house and to see where you fit all of this stuff. That's amazing. And you're producing
summer now, so they're all
25%
outside
of your...
deck, but come winter, everything's inside again. It's all plants.
So do you have things that you take outside in the summer and then bring in the winter?
Yes, our banana tree, our moringa tree, our ginger plants, our turmeric. What is it? Mostly our trees that we try to nurse, even though we live in a townhouse and we're dreaming of moving to a farm. So please pray for that, because we would like.
I think you deserve a farm, Nikki. I think you deserve
please pray for that.
A big garden. So how big is your yard then? If you're in a townhouse, I would imagine not very large.
Mm-hmm. I would say, I always ask my husband this because I forget. So the property is like 1,600 square feet. And of course, less than that is where we grow because it's the backyard. But when we calculated, it's like 1/40th of an acre.
Wow. And you're able to produce a quarter of your food, your fruits and vegetables that you eat. And you have all of those trees. Wow. Well, I'm glad they're portable, because when you get your farm, you need to take all those with you.
That's what we're trying to do, is like keep them alive until we can move. But that's funny because our banana tree is our Christmas tree because it's huge.
So when it's winter time, then you have to kind of take up less space in the house because there's plants everywhere.
Yes, yeah, there is plants. And some of them, like, we'll just have to, I'm sorry, we can't take all of you in. So we just have to sacrifice.
Oh, darn.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Okay, and you have 6 kids, and you homeschool, and you run this gardening business, and you do all of these things, and you're happy and joyful, so you're enjoying what you're doing. That is amazing. Well, I appreciate so much visiting with you today. I've appreciated learning from you, and it has just been enough to whet my appetite. And there's so much more that I need to learn. But thank you for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much, too, for being able to share this with you and your audience.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Alfred Austin. He said, "The glory of gardening, hands in the dirt, head in the sun, heart with nature. To nurture a garden is to feed not just the body, but the soul." Today, I invite you to feed your body and soul by connecting with nature in some way, possibly by growing your own food. See you next time on Linda's Corner.